All right, let's get to some of the fun stuff. Let's start building a database, the schema, the tables, like here will be the domains, the resource, the attributes, setting up the functions, see how these things operate, together with each other. And we're going to do all that not by writing code in the command line or not by creating pages and so on, but we're going to do that by creating tests. And this is kind of one of those things that I've since moved away from Bubble that I really appreciate is this, that in code you have this almost native thing of you're gonna create tests, right? And tests is just well, in Bubble you don't have that, so you're always manually testing. Did I break this thing on the other side of the application when I change something over here? And writing tests does not guarantee that doesn't happen, but because it's there and because you do this on you can do this very cheaply in any time. I end up using it a lot. I end up relying on this a lot to see, did the thing I just changed, did I break something else? And this is nice to do, right? So let's get this started. All right, let's start by just taking a look at what the generator has created for us already. Like whenever you create a project in Bubble, there's a couple of things already created for you. Like the user is there. There's a field for email, created at, created date, created by. You have a few things like that. In the generator here for Ash and for Phoenix is kind of similar, right? So we're here in our project folder. There's a bunch of stuff here. What we're going to be looking at is the lib. So this is going to be the main part of our application. And then you have the, let's say, backend and front end here, right? So let's go into the backend. In the backend, you have a bunch of things that were generated for us already. One of them being the accounts, say, namespace, right? Module, probably the right name. And we can see here that this is a domain. Right, the domain houses many resources, and one of these resources is a user, and that you can see that the user kind of calls back to I belong to this domain, and I'm using the database. The database, we're going to create a table called users. We have a bunch of actions here, and then at the bottom we see the attributes. So the ID is going to be one of the fields. The email is going to be another field of the type CI string, which is a case insensitive string. And then you have a nice little thing here too, saying like, look, emails have to be unique, right? So this is what it's saying. It's okay, we're going to give this an identity, unique email, and saying that emails are going to be and whenever we run the migrations, Ash is going to do something to the database saying that, okay, at the database level, you're not allowed to have double, 2 times the same email for a user. All right, so on domains, right? So the kind of the greater workspace, the greater thing that houses a bunch of resources. There are a couple of ways to generate it. One of them is, you can do it by hand, but Ash itself gives you a couple of these handy little function that you can run to create these things, right? So if you go to the Ash, like for instance, non-view here, home, and if you look in here, mix tasks. So these are things that you can run in the command line that can do stuff, right? So one of them is the domain here. So you can just, kind of grab this and we can run that, and that's going to generate our domain, right? So we're going to go here, de facto ex, which is the name of our application. We're going to call this workspaces, and that's going to tell us, what needs to happen here. Like it's going to add this, make this change here to the config.exe file, and then the other one is going to create this file here. So as soon as you create it, you can see that the changes have been made here. So now that's there. And we got this domain. All right, now let's say that we want to go ahead and we're going to put it inside of here, the workspace.ex, and that's going to be our resource, right? So we're going to go def module, and my language server is not working, no big deal. We're going to go de facto ex workspaces workspace do and I can see the language server is trying to start here, but I don't know what's happening. In any case, so we're going to use here the Ash resource, right? And we can do a couple of things here. So we can even just say, look, we're gonna take inspiration here from users, and we're gonna kind of do the same, but for the workspace domain. So it's kind of a lot of copy pasta here. So OTP app, we're gonna call it the same, de facto ex, and then we're gonna say domain. That's going to be de facto ex workspaces. And we're going to, this is also will have a data layer saying, this should have a place in the database. So we're going to go here, Postgres data layer. And I think that's it for now. I forgot a comma here. Right, so then we're going to skip over this. We're going to do the Postgres. This. We're going to do the table, and we're going to put here workspaces, plural, and the repo. So this is going to be the de facto ex repo. And repo is just the like this module that from Elixir that interacts with the database. Right, so we got that there, and now let's create some of the attributes. Right. So attributes, and we can go do and UID primary key. We call this ID. There's also a little function here, timestamps. That what this function here does. If you go here and we go timestamps, voila. This thing is just a shorthand for create timestamp and update timestamp. So the created at and insert at, right? So this is going to be, it's just a little function that does that to the database ourselves. And let's say that we want to add here another attribute that's going to be, we're going to call this name of the type string, right? So just that should be enough for us to try this out, right? So let's do a mix hash code gen, kind of make it a dev x code gen. So what this is going to do is going to take a look at what we have here so far, look at what is in the database migration so far, and say, okay, do I need to make a new database migration? And a migration is just a way to say, okay, we're going to need to add a new column, a new table, change something in our database, right? And we can take a look at the existing database. Let me see here, de facto ex, and we can see like what it has so far, right? So you have here users, and if I go into the structure, you can see here user has ID and email. And that's so far what we have here. So this one is, it corresponds to this, right? The email ID, that's what you have here. Email ID, CI text, that's what this is, CI string. And then you have unique email, and that's corresponding to this thing right here, right? So now, if I go ahead and create this code gen, we're gonna get a bunch of stuff here. There's some errors. Let's see what domain modules checked. Workspaces. There's a typo of mine here somewhere. Let's see here. Config. Let's see here. That's okay. Here, that's it. So we need to add a resource here, and we're going to call this the resource. Let me just go copy this. So the resource here is going to be de facto ex and workspaces workspace. Voila. And now, if we get this right, voila. It's going to generate a couple of files here, right? So we can see these files are in the private directory, the repo. Repo is going to be our database. And you can see that whenever we generate the project, it generates a couple of files that set up the database, some functions in the database. But now we're just looking at this one here, and you can see that Ash is trying to make our lives easier by, okay, it's going to now create a table. The primary key is going to be false, so it's not going to be the integer primary key. It's going to be the UUID type of ID. Is adding this insert to that, updated that, and so on. And then, so if you go up, we're going to create all this. If you go down, just delete this thing, right? That's all it's doing. And then Ash has a little, way to keep track of what everything has been created. And it's just some sort of JSON to know what is there, right? So now, if I go ahead and do mix Ash migrate, this is going to run the migrations. If everything is okay, it's just going to give you some info. And if we go in here now and refresh, you can see that we have now workspaces and we have all those things that we created there. Right, so this is as simple as that. And then if I disconnect from the database, if I remember how to do it, yeah, like that, and I can do mix acto drop. So we're going to drop the database, and if I go back here, there's nothing in there, right? So this is a thing that we're going to need to do every now and then, is to just go drop the database, recreate it, at least here in the development environment, so that we can really mess around with it. We don't have to live with all this data in there. We can wipe it all clean. And then to set it up again, we can just do mix Ash setup. That's going to run kind of everything there. And if we refresh, you can see that everything is there already. Right? So we got some, we got our database here. All right, so we got the resource and domain, but it doesn't do anything. There are no functions to it. There's no way for us to interact with that, right? So for us to do that, we're gonna take a look at actions, right? So if we go to the Ash resource, we can look at the DSL, so and how to do it, and we can come in here and look at actions, right? And this is going to be how we can create our the actions to it, right? It already has here. So if I go to actions and do, let's say, default, and then we can list a bunch of them. So CRUD. So is it create, read, destroy, update. So let's say that we're going to have all of these functions here on this resource, right? I made a typo somewhere, apparently. All right, so we got these the kind of basic actions in there. Let's see what it looks like, right? So I'm in the test folder here. We're going to go to de facto ex. We're going to mirror everything that's on the other side. Workspace, test, and then this is the script, so it's exs, and then def module, and for some reason my language server is not working today. So then we're going to do that, and we're going to call it de facto ex workspaces workspace test. That's good enough. And then we're going to use the de facto ex data case, which is a bunch of facilities to the tests. And we're just going to call it here actions, and we're going to kind of alias the de facto ex workspaces, the workspace, and that should give us some, I can can see that is our language server is building. Let's see if it, okay, there's some stuff happening, good. And now we can start using this, right? So we can start seeing how the actions work. So how do we use actions in Ash? We can just go down here and not change this. I want, hold on. Actions are down here. There's a whole section of them. So we can now, well, one thing we're going to have to keep in mind is that each one of these actions need to accept some inputs, right? So if, let me just see here how to create an action. Well, so what we're going to do is, let's start it here. And just to see an example of how to create an action. Voila. So you can see here's the example on the tutorial. They have, you know, how to run these things, right? So we're gonna, we're gonna take the resource that we were talking about. We're gonna pipe it through a change set of some sort of type with this name, and then actually run the action. And change sets is like this really incredible. Just a fantastic idea on, you know, because one of the problems I have with Bubble is that, okay, I created this whole thing, and I say, okay, like this workspace is, the name can never be empty, or the name can, you know, has some conditions in it. And what I have to do is that, you know, I have to create a workflow that checks these things, right? That, okay, but then as soon as it checks, what does it do, right? And change sets is that kind of, you know, this thing that says, okay, I have a, you know, you wanted to create this. You said, okay, it needs to, you know, the name cannot be empty. The name has to have 3 letters A in there. Like you can put a bunch of verifications on it, and if it fails, it will tell you, okay, it failed, right? So it will give you an error, and you can handle that, and you can, you know, handling that could be showing the user something and so on. Right, so that's what change set is. That's why we don't create it right away. It's a good idea to put it through this so that it actually validates against you know, whatever we put in here. Right, so let's see if we can do that. So we're going to say workspace, and we're going to do Ash change set to create for create. Voila. And we're going to call the function create, and we're going to pass some information to it, right? So here we have, what is it, name. So we're going to say the name is going to be some workspace, right? And then if we do a dbg, which is kind of the debug in here, we'll be able to see what it looks like already. So right now it's compiling our application. Give it a second. All right, it finished compiling everything, and it ran our test here, and you can see number 8, this is what it's doing. So, okay, on number 8, you asked me to output whatever you had. So this is what I had here. So I have change set for create. This, you know, the action type is create, the action is create, and there's an error that says like, look, there's no such input, right? Saying that, okay, this input that is referring to his name, I don't know about it. Right. And why is it doing that? And because here, this, you know, this create here doesn't have any, like right now it doesn't accept anything. So what we have to do is, okay, well, a couple of ways to do it, but let's just go here with the public and say true, right? And now if I run this again, it will say, look, now it should be, is still not valid, right? Let me just see. Now what we need to do, makes Ash code gen. Let's try this again. And we can see here from resource, and we can see in the actions, I believe we can set it up. So we're going to have to do this part right here. So we're going to now let it accept a few things, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to just pull this out of here. So let's delete it from there. We're going to create a create action that will accept, and we're going to say name and primary. We're going to say this is the primary creation one, right? And now if we run this again, well, now it's valid because that attribute exists. So I was wrong. It's not just by putting to public true, but it is doing like that. Now, if we do hash create, right? So this is now going to give us some. Let me move this down. Oh, actually, let me. Now we can actually go assert that we're going to get an OK in our workspace. Right? So this is saying, look, this is a testing function saying, look, this is going to happen. If this doesn't happen, breakdown, and then we can do a DBG workspace so that we can see what it's given, and we can see here, workspace was created with this information and so on. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to see it here because even though the database is there, I don't think I think it wipes the database every run, right? So you're not going to have it here, but you know that's exactly what is created in there, right? And this is going to be the process for us to kind of creating tests, is that we can then assert that workspace dot name is going to be equal to that some workspace, right? So we can see that in there, and this is going to, if we run this again, we should have everything green, meaning that it's passing. And this is the basics of how to create tests that we're gonna assert these things. I always like to do the tuple assert, create it, and then check did the information we pass work in this way. And then as we grow this and we are having lots of different tests in here, and at some point we're just gonna run a mixed test in there. This is gonna kind of test the whole database, the whole project, and we can see it will run through everything, and maybe we shot ourselves in the foot somewhere, and this should be able to catch it, right? So this is the way that I like to operate with this. So let's take this and say, kind of do a couple more things here, right? So we can let's go ahead and try to update this this workspace, right? So we're saying here we can update. So we can do, let's try this out. We can take the workspace. We can do an hash change set for update, and we're going to pass a new name for it. New name, and see hash update, and we see what happens. Right, so apparently, well, how are we going to know that anything happened? Because we're not asserting anything. Updated workspace. Right, so now we had an error, right? So what was the error? Again, no such input. So we have to do the same here again, that our update, we need to kind of break it out. So we're going to update, do, and we're going to accept name, right? And then we can take it out of here, and now it should work, right? So now we have, and we can keep on going further to say, okay, I just made that change. Did that change actually stick, right? So I can assert updated workspace dot name now equals new name. And this is kind of how I like to get to know the application, to see, kind of how's this thing working, which part go in there, like what am I missing, and so on. Now, Ash has another nice little thing here, saying like, look, I'm going to do a lot of creating and all over the place, and this looks a little bit verbose. There are a couple of ways to do this, kind of make it a bit simpler, and that's the code interface. And we can say do define, not this, define, and then we can define create, for instance, right? And we can now use the code interface, and we can see here that workspace dot create has that function in there, and he already created some documentation for us here that takes into account all of the different the things that are in there. Like, so it accepts an input called name. So we can go in here and say create name, new name, right? And then we can pipe this out. And what that's going to do is, create it just the same as it did here, but this is kind of a bit of a shorter version of it. Like, it's the same thing that we're doing, it's just that it's all built into that, right? So this is how we can start using Ash and all these functions for everything. All right, so we built our first domain, first resource, we activated some of the actions, we ran migrations, we dropped our database, we've set it up again. But this is the kind of exercise that we're going to be doing over and over again as we discover the application here, how we create tests, we see how things work, see what doesn't work, the compiler is going to catch us, our tests are going to catch us, and this is how I like to take this process of building this application.